Now, the Independent National Electoral Commission last week released the final list of voters that will cast their ballots in the elections, with the Northwest and Southwest having the lion's share of the 93.4 million eligible voters. Now, by gender, men surprisingly dominated the voter register at 49.054 million, representing 52.5%, while the figure of female voters, stands at 44.41 million. That is a 47.5%. Now, for the age group, registered youths from 18 to 34 were 37.060 million, middle-aged 35 to 49, 33.4 million, and the elderly, that's from 50 to 69, 17.7 million. We also have the old, that's from 70 years and above, 5.3 million. Today, we discuss the role women and youth will play in the next election, and we're having joining us via Zoom from Mina in Niger State is a female politician, Mrs. Dorothy Nuhu Akenova, and she was also a presidential aspirant under the platform of the SDP. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on Daybreak.
Good morning.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. All right, so let's move on. We're also joined in the studio by Director of Strategic Communications Coalition for Northern Group, Samaila Musa. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, good morning. So, let's start with you, Dorothy. Looking at the data showing that male, because usually we feel, the assumption is that women are more in number and a bit more politically active, especially when it comes to voting. Is it a surprise for you that the data is showing that more male register to vote in the next year's election than women?
Okay, now let's come back to Mr. Samaila. Now, looking at the number of women who are registered, like my colleague has actually said, previously women were more and all that. Some people seem to think that it's a deliberate effort or plan to disenfranchise a woman, this time around. This is the reason why, this is the reason for the low turnout of women to register. Do you agree with that?
No, I disagree. By who? Who is trying to disenfranchise women? Because the sensitization was quite very open. There's no any part of the process that's actually designed to skim out women. In fact, I felt they were at a more advantage because quite a number of, especially when you look at from the northern part of the country, quite a lot of our women usually are home. So they have all the freedom or all the time to actually go sit down and go through the process from beginning to the end of it until they get their PVCs. So really, these are just baseless insinuations because the system is quite very open. And even the local radio stations were also engaged in the sensitization drive that INEC, started when this whole process began. So really, there's no part of the system that actually try to skim them out.
Another group actually, blamed the low turnout of women on voter registration on the alleged domination of the political space by their male counterparts. And some people can't seem to fathom the fact that in 2023, you have so many men and very few women.
Well, that actually should be an issue of choice. You see, because over time, especially in recent times, from maybe 2015, 2019, the sensitization on women participation become a bit higher. So one will think ordinarily the trend should be, surging up rather than, nose diving. So really, for me, I feel maybe they got discouraged, but not a particular plan or scheme from any desk anywhere to say, no, women should participate less. Maybe perhaps some cultures frown at, or women coming all out to contest for, vie for a political office. But in the whole, the Nigerian system or the system we're operating does not deliberately. Perhaps maybe when you talk about how our campaigning and all of that are being carried out, maybe some of them are actually do not have the drive or the build for the kind of rigorous process they go through when it comes to, because and then I think it's even coming less when you talk about toggery in elections. In campaigns, it's becoming less and lesser compared to what we witnessed at the early stage of this democratic dispensation, where so many killings, political killings here and there. So on a general note, I feel there's no any deliberate effort from anywhere to actually shut the women out of political office.
So let me go back to Dorothy. Now, what do you think, look, as is the aspiration of this woman, of course, the motivation and also likelihood of, what would be the impact of these women that have registered to vote? Where are the women going?
The women are going with women, all women who have emerged as candidates. But before I even speak further on that, let me beg to disagree with my comrade there, the member of the coalition of the northern groups, Mr. Samaila. I disagree. The system is designed in such a way that it does not favor women. It doesn't have to do with our physical energy, because no campaign works if women are not on the stage directing. We follow the campaigns through all nooks and crannies of the country. No candidate goes to campaign without women. Women have the energy to sustain the campaign. If we talk about resources, that is another thing altogether, because I know the major key player in aging women out was because parties thought that women didn't have the financial capacity. They don't put financial there, they don't take capacity, but we understand that it is lack of naira power that they are referring to sustain the campaigns to the end. That is the argument that has been there on board. The gender appropriation bills that were flung out of the National Assembly is an indication that the system is designed in such a way to marginalize women. I like one of these feminists who says that there is a complicity in Nigeria's case to ensure that women are marginalized from participating in governance and leadership. And that is the truth. So women that have registered, we are going to still continue mobilization. Even though there was awareness creation, it wasn't targeted only at women. Even though it was meant to be for women, everybody had it. And like I said, many youths did register, and a lot of them are also men. And that has boosted the registration of men towards the 2023 elections. You can imagine if women are empowerment, for example, the amount of campaign and capacity building that is required to bring them at par with their male counterparts is immense. And that is the reason that we may see that despite all the effort that was made, we didn't know that, but we have not gotten the numbers that we were hungry for. It is still not a very huge gap, we can still make it if we all come out en masse and make sure that we put our books where women
Okay, you said something at the beginning of this intervention that women are going with women, but experience shows, doesn't really support what you are saying. Would women really go with women? Going by experiences of, a lot of times when, female politicians, like yourself, aspire for positions, even though there are a number of delegates or voters that are women, but they end up casting their votes not according to the gender line.
At the party level, it's a different ballgame altogether because people have a party card. If they are party members, it will be a tough call to tell them don't vote for your party, go and vote for this woman. But I'm sure that many conscientized women will do that despite the fact that they are card bearing members of another party, just to enable us to break the chain so that we can have more women in there. We have to make these major sacrifices to make sure that we change the landscape and begin to have more women involved. And the notion that women don't support women is false. It's a myth, and it only works where we have leadership and governance discourse. Are not reminded or told or brainwashed to think that we don't love one another. In fact, we come together and do things together. I mean, I see women who are married to the same husband, they wear the same kind of clothes, they bring children up together. I mean, what kind of collaboration do we want to take that as that? If we can do that at the home level, we also can at the leadership level. But we have constantly been pulled and torn apart from one another by pushing the myth that we don't love one another, we are jealous of each other, we hate each other, we don't support each other. And the narrative does give the impression that men are in love with men. Wow! Wherever a man men are there working with the man. And that is not true. We see men who are loggerheads who are each other's mates and so on and so forth. So it is the same. There are spaces and times for disagreement. But outside of that, we do work together. So what we've done this time is to push a different narrative from a woman's perspective. We don't want the men telling us the story of how much we love one another. We can tell one another how much we do care and support one another. And throughout my aspiration, the women that were in my party were very supportive, and they would state it openly and clearly that they were not going to cast their vote for anyone else on gender lines, but for a woman. And it has debunked that myth.
Okay, now, Mr. Samaila, now looking at, the percentage of youths that have actually, registered right now, the youth is actually another group that people have actually complained that have been disenfranchised or, yes, that have been disenfranchised. Now, looking at the percentage of these youths, how defining will the 2023 elections be for them, and what impact will this percentage make?
Okay, yeah, it's going to be a major milestone, and because you see, I think what the trajectory is actually showing is that we're trying to move away from all those beer parlor assertions where people believe power is given, it has to be grabbed. When youths are having some entitlement mentality that, oh, you can go around partying all around town, and then the elders will bring power and say, please, youths, take it, it should be your turn or something. I think it's a good one because it shows there's so much enthusiasm being injected into the system to say, okay, now is our time, even if we're not contesting in our large numbers now, but that we're getting interested in the process is showing that the level of interest is going to be getting higher until people started feeling, oh, in fact communities will begin to now field youths and be like, no, you people have been doing it for some time. This time around, since they are also interested in this thing, because over time you find a lot of youth are not interested in it, and that is actually been the major setback. So the fact that now they are getting more interested by even having the PVCs, because a lot of times on election day what we see is that on the streets you find youth playing football. whatever happens at the polling units is none of their business. So this drive is actually encouraging, and it's going to speak volume on how youth are going to grab power back later on to say, okay, now it's our country, and it's time to fix it. So it's actually a good one on a general note.
Okay, but are you satisfied that the number, Nigeria is a very useful, has a very useful population. That is, we have a young population. And looking at the 37 million young people that is aged between 18 to 35 and 34 who registered to vote, do you think this is satisfactory?
It's not satisfactory, but you see, it's an improvement compared to what we have in the previous years. But you see, in Nigeria, that age bracket actually doesn't represent the youth in total, because as far as we're concerned in Nigeria, up till 50 years old, you're still a youth. We've seen where almost a 60-year-old is being given youth leader in some times, in some parties or some political arrangements. So really, I'll take it from 18 to 49 that they actually quoted in that statistics. So when you look at that figure, you will still believe that, yes, because quite a number of times there are factors that really determine maybe like our economic situation in Nigeria make a lot of people still believe in their late 40s, they are still in that age bracket of being a youth, because a lot of 30-something years old are still under their parents' roof, trying to get a job or something, or still collecting stipends to, keep their body and soul together. So really, that number is not, we've not gotten to where we're going yet, but on a general note, it's acceptable based on the indices.
All right, let's go back to Mrs. Dorothy. Now, let's talk about stomach infrastructure. We actually know that, the economy is practically harsh on youths and women. And we've seen, and we've heard stories of candidates already, paying youths to come for rallies and, giving them some sort of, food and souvenir to vote for them. Do you think this would actually play a role, in the youths and women casting their votes this time around, or have the women and youths, wisened up?
Let me start by saying, as someone who's been in politics, that sometimes when we invite people to come and listen to us, we know that there is poverty. They don't have the funds to transport themselves to the venue. People are at the venue from like 9 a.m., 10 a.m. for a program that is supposed to start by 11. Sometimes the program doesn't start until 2. So to give people like refreshment is not, for me, a problem, because I can't invite you to my event and keep you hungry and say that when I come to read my manifesto, you will have the ability to listen, to process, and analyze what I am saying, to be able to take a stand. So if people are don't go and collect 10,000, 15,000, like we saw some ladies showing off their money in those youths, who are on social media to say they got 10K, please go and get your PPC, that we don't want that to happen. And we will still continue to run our sensitization, targeting people in both urban and rural areas to make sure that they don't exchange their votes for any amount of money. Souvenirs are normal, because when you wear a face cap that has my name and you walk the street from Poso to Kenshada, it means everybody who sees you and reads it has a kind of connection with who I am, has an awareness that I am, coming out to contest. So that's the purpose for the souvenirs, really. They are not meant to purchase votes. And when we flood the social media with misinformation that people are giving souvenirs because they are buying votes, we are not doing our democracy well. And when we begin to think that people who are 50 years old are still youth, we are not doing well for our society. We have to begin to operate on global standards. I remember the Ford Foundation director came once, and when he saw the people gathered in the room that were called youth, he expressed his surprise. And he said in his own context, people this age are the ones holding companies as directors, executive directors. But he understood that because of structure, we have people who are 40 claiming to be youth. We need to change that narrative as well. We can't continue like that and expect that Nigeria will change. If we want youth, let's take the definition of youth. I know that the Ministry of Youth has pegged the age at 35, which is still big by global standards, because for other places in developed countries it is 24. That is the maximum age in youth bracket. So to have 35 for Nigeria, and it wasn't supposed to be permanent. We're supposed to have worked so seriously in over a decade ago to make sure that we have faith in the proper use, So please, let's begin to have a proper narrative, and let's not push this stomach agenda campaign in a way that brainwashes people and preconditions them to think that voting time is eating time. Voting time is a sacrifice making time for the future, so that we can have the right leaders in place.
But then, in terms of policy demands and standpoint, where do women stand? Is there, because one of the issues is a lot of times we hear of marginalization of women, lack of inclusion, and all that. But then, is there some level of engagement with the candidates, especially maybe at the presidential level, so that some specific demands, some specific advocacy points that women have can be factored in by some of these candidates if any of them eventually wins the election?
Yes, we had the Women in Politics Forum recently organized, Zoom meetings. When we were aspiring, there were forums that were organized in Abuja for aspirants, presidential aspirants, and the schedule allowed presidential aspirants ample time to engage with women, and women raised questions. So that started since when we were aspiring, way before the primary elections. And the Women in Politics Forum again has organized sessions with presidential candidates, trying to see the manifesto, asking pointed questions like, what in your agenda do you have to forward or to promote the inclusion of women at all levels? And we have had, people come and say to us what percentage they are going to set aside for women appointments, when they do come in power. I still have concerns though, because after they told us the percentage, there is no further breakdown to talk about the strategies, the screening, or some kind of audit that needs to be put in place to make sure that the women who come on board are women who have something to give. Because we don't want women just for the sake of biological definition. We don't want people going to bring their classmates who have no understanding whatsoever of the gender issues that constitute challenges in our setting, and that are ignorant of the analytical tools that need to be used to ensure that women issues are identified and properly tackled. We want women who are conscious. We want the capacity, the exposure to do what it takes for inclusion to take.
Thank you very much.
about the things that they want to put in place to make sure that the right women are the women who are brought on board.
Thank you.
Show us that even if it is just that 35% that we get, and the women know what they're doing who are there, there'll be a huge change.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Dorothy Nuhu, for joining us this morning from Mina, and we hope to have you another time. But I'll come back to the studio where we still have Mr. Samaila, the spokesperson or director of strategic communication of the Coalition of Northern Group. Now, now looking at the issue of stomach infrastructure, she's trying to de-emphasize it. But, looking at the Nigerian reality and all that, are you not concerned that, these young people, because may end up, voting for the highest bidder, for people who could be able to give them something on the election day?
Yeah, those tendencies are actually there. And let me start by mentioning one of the things you mentioned about the issue of youth. I think a lot of times the mistake we keep making in Nigeria is shying away from reality and going by what is theoretical. The aspect of the youth in Nigeria is, what you say is theoretical, but not in reality. You understand? I'm sure even she in her own party, she will attest to that fact that it's not in reality. The first time we actually ever noticed a youth holding a position in politics, at the national level, was when PDP announced one young man. And even that wasn't something he, by his own effort, or perhaps his own politicking, propelled him to. It was a slot given to a bloc that his father belongs to. Do you understand? So in reality, the youths are being either deliberately or by their own making are being shot out of the system, that before you even emerge as a youth, even as all these footballers, football age is different from the actual age in reality. So we should go by what is real in our own society and not what other climes are doing, because in those climes there are proper records that says you can't even falsify your age. You understand? But in actual reality here, a 40-year-old is still playing for under 17 in our climb. So in all is, look, this proper stomach infrastructure thing, you cannot wish it away, because you are not doing the young man any good if he hasn't eaten for 3, 4, 5 days, and somebody is actually offering him. The quest for survival comes first. These are basic things. So the only thing we can keep sermonizing until we attain that pedestal that everybody shun that aspect is to say, when they give it to you, collect it if you need it, and go sort yourself out. But let your conscience guide you to do the right thing. That's the only thing that is reality. But if you keep saying, don't collect when they give you, what options have you provided for the young man? He hasn't eaten. How many of us, because you can't solve everybody's problem. In one day, if 10 people approach you that they haven't eaten, you can only do what you can do. The rest of them will fall into the hands of those people who will offer them this same thing we're talking about. In reality, even if you are in their shoes, you might not be able to resist that. So the first thing is, if you need it, collect it, but let your conscience, let what people are saying is the right thing, because sometimes a hungry man does not have the capacity, like she mentioned, to even think properly and process and say, I've arrived, I've analyzed this candidate, and I feel this one is the right person, except what people say, maybe it's testimonies of people about, particular candidates. So it's not something we can actually wish away in a hurry in our own climb. It's something that is going to remain with us. Maybe we keep praying that let it be not for too long away from now.
All right, now still talking about the youths. Now history actually has it that, the youths participate less in the most critical aspect of elections, which is voting. And there's so much, voting or voter apathy when it comes to the youths. So how do the youths intend to influence, leadership when there's so much, voter apathy? Because it's one thing to collect your PVCs, and it's another thing to vote. How can they influence leadership, when they don't go out to vote?
Yeah, that's a very, very, very wrong aspect of the whole thing that we're talking about, because I've heard situations where people actually are going through the pains of getting this PVC just for a means of identification.
Exactly.
because I don't have international passport, I don't have a driving license. Which other one is easier for me to get? Let me get my PVC, so to identify myself whenever the needs arises. It's actually wrong, and then I think there's more that we need to do more in trying to conscientize them. You see, it's a stupid man that thinks that politics is not his business, because no matter how intelligent or how much you think you know, people who are non-entities will end up ruling you because you feel you're too either big or you're too social for that. And you see, what our own youth in our own climb believe is being social is about parties, wearing clothes that are trending, social media to call people out and all of that. We need to do more to try to let them know. Yeah, there was a time I was almost running to tears the day I heard the late Maitama Sule say to us in Sheraton that he became the first Minister of Petroleum at the age of 27. And at that time, I was over that age already. So I was feeling, where you understand, because it's actually a wake-up call, to know that at that age that you're still gallivanting around, that you're still sagging your jeans, some people are already ruling their nations. So it's actually time for us, maybe perhaps after, because the timing is so short, we can only do what we can do, but after this it's time for even the government to be deliberate about it, to know that the future actually lies in the hands of those ones, because we see a system where we're going to be leaving this country in the hands of drug addicts, yahoo boys, and drug peddlers, because that seems to be the order of the day. That's where attention is. We are dealing with youth who see a 60-year-old man driving an Escalade, for example, and they are feeling that should be my next car, not really thinking how much he has covered or how long it took him to attain that position, but they just want to drive it. We're in an era of just the shortcut is actually the right way to go. So we need to do more, and the government need to be deliberate about it, to know that to work hard and to be patient, to walk through the system, to walk the meals is actually the right thing to do, and that's what's obtainable world over.
Thank you very much, Mr. Samaila, for coming to the show, and also for this very insightful take, and we hope to have you some other time.